All right. So we sculpted some crazy thing here. Now let's get in and let's go work on a child. Okay. Now we remember with the child there were a couple of like triggers. Those are all triggers that'll really help us kind of get a feel for it. Now we remember that the eyes are halfway, but of course not for a kid, right? They drop down. Where exactly do they drop down? Now our goal here is not to learn correct, perfect sculpting. My goal with you here is we learn approachable, we learn easily, we learn how to get in there from a very informal fashion. Something where maybe we're a little bit outside of our league, but we're still going to start to play. So we're not going to do it at halfway. We're going to drop it down so that it's a little bit below halfway. And it's cool. We'll move it up and down, right? And grab some reference. So let's go for 2-year-old. I'm going to just Google here on another screen. 2-year-old face. Okay, let's get rid of that. 2-year-old face. And as always, there's craziness. So let's search for something that's pretty straight on, because kids don't like straight on faces, right? Almost. I'm looking. Just pulled that out. Let's do face proportions. That might make it a little bit easier on the eye. So cute. So many things with Google. Let's take some measurements here. Where's halfway? I don't know about you, but halfway I'm putting it right at his brow. So it's like the orbit of the eye is directly below that. Alright, let's take a look at the halfway point here. I'm not going to find where the nose is. I'm going to find literally the halfway point. That's the secret to proportions. You just find your halves and your quarters. Alright, so we've got half is the brow, 1/4 is the nose, and then there's usually a rule of thirds, which appears to hold up pretty well for the lip. So it's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And that will work just fine. We've got our cheek. We've got the kind of crazy flat part of the kid's head. And then let's do a final check of width and height. Still about 0.75. Okay. So I've got those measurements. They're internalized. They're now in my brain, my mind, my body here, right? I got my halfway point, and I got my halfway point. And I got my eyes in between that. Let's go. Doom, 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 doom. There's the nose. There's the eyes. 1/3, 1/3. There's the lips. Lower lip. There's going to be the cheeks. They're going to get modulated a little bit. They're going to get moved out. And the eye is going to be somewhere right around there. Beautiful little ears. Looks good, yeah? Built that from those simple measurements. Still keeping our eye measurements roughly intact. 5 eyes. Let's go to town. Okay, checking. Make sure I don't screw it up, because you can accidentally start going too far. Start to carve out that brow. Start to pull out. Where's the nose? Okay, and I'm measuring with my hand. I'm literally measuring with my hand on the screen. There you go. Measure with your Wacom, something of that nature. Put a little bit of the nostrils in the lower hang, but the nose definitely turns up a bit. Okay, carving it down. I don't want to carve too big of a hole there. That's a bit of a problem I'm going to walk into. I'm going to try to find a space that's in between the nose and make sure I put the orbit of the eye back there. So I leave some room for these awesome cheeks, which are now going to grow. Chin. Let's go S3 and get that measurement. Really put in the corner, put that in. What did we forget? Forgot something really important. And if you forget this, it's kind of all downhill. Forgot the muzzle of the mouth. Forgot to build that form up. If you don't build that form up, it's just, it's going to be hard to get that to kind of work right. BS3. Cool. Now, something funny is happening. Okay? And I'm just trying to keep you up with the psychology, because I'm a little like I feel like, my heart's dropping. Something's wrong here, right? And it looks just wrong. It looks horrible. So I'm going to quickly check my measurements, and that's definitely one of the issues. I didn't get it at 1/3. So it started to look cramped and wrong, and like there was some kind of deformity in my little baby. So I'm going to undo that. Work that again, and it was partly because I moved the chin after the fact. So let's do this again. Okay. So we're going to drop that down a little bit of a tiny shift. It just makes such a huge difference in how we feel about it. So you got to be mindful of that, and really just mindful that your brain can really start to screw with you. If you start to do things that it does not like, it doesn't say nice things sometimes. It's mean, Mommy. My brain is mean to me. Okay, now definitely we've got some serious problems with this guy, but we've got our form delineated, which is what we wanted, right? So now let's get in there and get some of the depth accurate. So I got to push eyes back a bit and really get the brow. So I'm going to look at this from a side view and start to really kind of push this stuff back. But it's going to be important that we start thinking about some reference here. Now, when I'm bringing in reference, though, I'm going to bring this in because I want you and I, we're going to look at this together, and we're trying to extrapolate information, not copy it. We're extrapolating, not copying. That's a really important point. Okay, and I want to make sure that you are looking at this image, because this actually tells us a lot about the baby's face. What are we looking for from a side view? One of the things that's really important is just noticing this out, and in. So that shape right there is really important to representing a baby. And let's run that contour a little bit cleaner. So we're going to come up, around, and then there you go. That contour and that dip right there, that's really important for us to get the baby right. Now we can also come in here, let's say to this. Do a quick measurement. See, you can see that forward and that upward slant. That's the kind of form that's the information we're trying to extrapolate. We're also going to say take this and cut it in half, right? And that's about where that ear is. Now we're going to cut that in half again. And that's not quite where the eye is. About 1/4 is where that eye is going to be. And that's literally from this brow, which they have forms pulling out and in from there. So with that information, I'm going to move this off to the side, and I'll rotate my model around like that. And all I did was I Googled baby side view, and it got me that. Let's make sure my perspective is low. And what are we missing here? What's that first thing that we were supposed to get? We want to get it into our body, into our brain, so we do this really fast. First thing we're really missing, right, is that. We have instead what really amounts to a bit of a tiny adult face with smushed up proportions, because we haven't done the basic baby elements of pulling this out, pushing that in, pulling that out, and really elongating the skull to an extent. So let's do that now. Let's not create in a man what would be the glabella to the superciliary arch and a really strong brow. We're going to instead just have all of that kind of come in so that the forehead really goes forward. Okay, and the nose pops up. Real good angle to it. That lower, or those lips, they're just full of fat. They're just cute, fat little lips, right? Let's look at it in that 3/4 view that we were seeing earlier. I'm going to press Alt and move in a little bit. Okay, now let's get our measurements. Where's the halfway? There's going to be an ear there. That's the 1/4, so that's going to be where the eye is. The eye goes back a little bit. And then there's going to be a lot of cheek fat, kind of working its way there. And then we're going to go. So I've extrapolated out a bunch of information. Now I'm going to try to implement it. Big ears. Pushing that back in. Okay, so there's a series of things that cascade here. The cheek, there's that eye, and then there's the occipital. So these areas, this is just stuff I know from analyzing the face. I just cut away right in this area. Whoops. Start to separate the forehead from the the temporal area. Start to separate the cheek from the temporal area. And then babies have this like halfway point where it dips. Get this kind of sunken quality in there. And then we're going to wrap the cheek around. Something's always overlapping something else. So we're going to wrap the cheek Let's establish some better planes in there too. Just press shift and start to smooth that out and come back in with S3. And let's divide this. S3. Deep corners. Occasionally something will trigger me. I don't know if this ever happens to you, but it'll trigger me and I'll just want to stop, right? I just don't feel good. So that was just happening like a moment ago. I had to pause the video. It's triggered, I kept saying this dragon face come up. And this is what we want out of this kind of form of sculpting. Having that feeling like this is horrible, it's starting to look like a dragon, why is his lip splitting, why is his nose splitting, all of that stuff. That's what we want to come up when we're doing this. Because that's what you got to let go. That's what you got to relax to kind of quickly do this, because I'm focusing on the wrong things. The eyes aren't right, you know, all these things aren't right. Of course they're not right. We didn't start it from solid anatomy, did we? Is that wrong? No, it's not wrong. Check out Steve Lord's sculpting. He starts with the vague forms and rough and everything, and he could start with anything and get something out of it. You need to be able to have that skill. Be able to start with anything and get something out of it, so you're not dependent on steps that you did 20 steps ago. That's what makes you a powerful sculptor. You can get in and find something quickly and beautifully. I'm going to switch brushes now because clay buildup is starting to give me some problems in what I want to kind of do. And the standard brush is just going to be a little bit easier for some of the more relaxed, some of the surfaces I want to start to create. So again, the process for creating form with the standard brush is you push in and you smooth. You pull out and you smooth. I'm going to lower this, start to smooth some of that stuff out. Go back up. Got some great lips going in there, right? I love that. Okay, let's get the eyes going. As soon as I adjust these cheeks a little bit. And let's just set the ear up a little bit better. I'm going to separate the ear. Put a back of the ear in there. Put an ear hole in there. Start to separate out the helix and the anti-helix. Put the tragus and the anti-tragus in there with a nice simple line. S3 to start to pull that. Okay. Starting to get this intact. Really getting that side of the ear. Okay. Starting to work from a distance, right? The only thing we don't have now are the eyes. So let's get that going. Clay buildup. I'm pushing in the corner of the eye, and I'm going to start to add some fat. That fat eventually starts to become the upper lid, the upper eyelid. But notice that I'm keeping this separate from the brow. So the brow exists, and then there's another plane. It's really important because with babies, the brow is less developed, so this becomes its own plane. It becomes another place that catches light, and you see it on babies. You'll see that that part catches light, and it catches it differently than, say, they do in an adult. So from a distance, that's working. Am I wrong? Now we got to just start filling all of this stuff in. I'm looking at it from below, seeing how it's working. Okay. Starting to pull it off. Now, am I going to do the lower lid and do the eyeball and do all? No. What I'm going to do, just like I did with the upper lid, I'm just going to do a form that kind of gives me the planes and the general values that I need. And then I start to extract or specify anatomy. So I need something that represents the eyeball and the lower eyelids. See that? Gives me that plane. Now it's also wise to be able to get a little bit of the caruncula, but when we're babies, we don't have the same kind of, not all the form is present in the same way, right? So there, my boy barely has a caruncula. And I'm going to put in the orbit of the eye, and then I'm going to just check my positioning again. Looking okay. And we're at about 25 minutes. Now I put the hole in there, and then I started to just build the lower eyelid right up on top of that, helping to kind of bridge from that orbit of the eye we had built up to the eyeball itself. Making sure that the lower eyelid is subservient underneath the upper eyelid. It's a really important point. And then I'm going to just kind of make a little circle around. You'll learn to put that in almost everybody. Okay, and now all we got to do is we got to just be trimming the fat a little bit. Some porker lips there, right? And we do that with smooth. And I let smooth kind of do its thing. Then I come back in and I emphasize stuff with standard. And then you can divide it again if you want. Oops, wrong color. BS3, actually BDS, Damien Standard Brush. And then you can start doing some line work if you want. Some of this is real, some of this just catches light and catches shadow, which is part of our job here. Now, I'm kind of destroying that nostril there. I'm losing all of that volume. So, let's just leave it a little vague. You know, I'm going to stop this for a second, actually. Anybody else see a problem here? This happens to me more than more than I probably ever share with you guys. But this is definitely wrong. Actually, it looks like an adult. Why does it look like an adult? Remember the rule I was telling you earlier? Try to make the eyes smaller. That's when we were creating that guy with the really big head, a lot of fat and jowls and all of that, and little tiny beady eyes. I made a baby with little tiny beady eyes. What do babies have? Really big eyes. So we got to fix that. This little guy looks too serious. So if this happens to you, I'm going to show you quickly how I fix these things. I go nuclear, right? Just going to go nuclear because that's the fun. So I got a little bit of the brow right in there. I'm going to just come in maybe. I'm going to see if this starts to work. It gives me everything I want. Get out that eye closer to the edge. Just a really big eye. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of pull in that eye mixed in with the lower lid, and we're going to start to establish our plane. It's a little tricky because it's messy. But this is good exercise for us because we need to start to create form that's not properly established. That's fine. Being able to deal with, things on the fly like that, again, is what's going to make you a powerful sculptor. Now I'm going to start to suggest the lower eyelid. Oops. we're starting to get there. Okay, but there's one thing with babies that really starts to kind of mess with your mind. You know, I'm trying to create a lower eyelid and all of that stuff, but stuff really starts to blend. So one of the things that I've noticed is that their upper eyelid will tend to kind of become the same. It becomes this large thing that becomes part of the form, moving off into their temporalis to an extent. So I'm going to start working on it from this lower level. And sometimes, how do I say this? When somebody's demoing the sculpting of a form, a lot of times what you and I get is we get like the result of years of labor and a system that they've kind of developed to quickly allow them to demo, because nobody likes to demo and not get the form they want in 5 minutes. It's not a pleasant thing. So I'm kind of asking for a little bit of forgiveness from you when I do these things. You have to, but you know me, and my goal isn't to look good in front of you. My goal is to look like you, and for us to look good together. I don't want to be some guru up here who knows how to do it and you're some peon. We're both in this together, you and me. And I have come from very humble beginnings. I may have started when I was 6, but that is really kind of its own story, because it was 6 I started, and then I stopped when I was I think 10 or 11, or no, maybe 8, and then there was like, I had a difficult childhood. We moved around a lot. We moved up into Alaska, and when I was living in Alaska, I'd lost all my friends. I didn't know what to do. My family, my parents were having it was just a horrible time for them. They were not connecting at all, and eventually led to divorce and all that stuff. And I got into a whole bunch of trouble. Basically, quit drugs when I was 14. Gives you a sense of how much trouble I was in. And didn't pick this stuff up again until I was in my 20s, after all kinds of odd jobs and craziness and things like that. So it was a long haul for me, and a lot of doubt, because I had to do a lot of it on my own. Ba-boom, moment of truth. Go up in subdivision levels. And let's put the eye in there a little bit better. There we go. There we go. A lot more to do, as always, right? But we start to feel the play in his face now. And it took me a while. I had to regroup, and I had to rethink the process. I had to stop talking. And you got to remember, you can't do it all. You can't do your email, check your Facebook, sculpt, do your, prioritize things, talk to your family, talk to your friends. You can't do all of that stuff at the same time. There's multiple studies out there now that show that nobody multitasks. What people do is they switch. So they'll do a task and switch, do a task and switch, do a task and switch. Women are better at this than men, so the studies say, and I would agree. But no matter what, you switch. And every time you switch, you lose efficiency for a period of time. Your efficiency drops as you gather up data and get everything ready to start again. Research study after research study has shown when you focus on one thing, you do it in a way that's familiar to you and in a place that's familiar to you, your success increases exponentially. Okay. You also have to do things that are kind of connected with each other. So when I talk, I'm interrupting the sculptor in me to talk and share something, and I have to go back to the sculpting. That's my thing that I deal with. But you might have Facebook open. You go to Facebook, every time you come back, your work is going to suffer. You go to your inbox. You got to make sure you know how to handle that, or your work is going to suffer because of it. So be mindful of all that stuff. I'm using like the most minimal reference for this, and that's really kind of my goal. I'm Googling, say, 2-year-old face, 2-year-old side view or baby side view, and I'm kind of working things from here, looking for patterns of form. And I can see all of that stuff in the photo reference and then also just from my own studies. I haven't sculpted a lot of babies, so you get to see my thinking kind of early on in the process, which I think is a really great thing. But I don't know, I think this guy looks better than he did, 6, 8 odd minutes ago. I love this undo history because we can actually just go there and see. Yeah, there he looks a little like he's pissed off. To the left, right? But now he's happier. And we can give him a little bit of a lift. Or not. That's for another lesson. You gotta move all kinds of stuff for that. All kinds of fat has to move under the zygomaticus major. Have a fantastic time. Let's see what the next video gives us. I think we have a female to sculpt. Whew, that's hard.